Well, hello once again. It's Sunday when you're watching this. It's actually Friday when I'm making it. Saturday of this week, tomorrow for me, yesterday for you. I will be participating in an online youth conference that Howland Baptist Church is holding, so looking forward to that. Our teens are looking forward to participating. But I'm putting this together on Friday. It's a rainy day. You can probably see through the window behind me today. It's a little bit darker out, so a little rainy out. But thinking about what we wanted to talk about today, what message I could bring. Last week was a topical message on the truth brought from John. This week is more of a brief study, more of a topical sermon, I guess you could say. Jeremiah dealt with times, and one of the things I've enjoyed over the last few years, being an adult that's been a believer since I was 13, so that's 40 some years ago, 45 years ago I became a believer. Been studying the Word of God more now than ever before in my life, and studying the Old Testament, the minor prophets, the major prophets, going through and seeing the harmony, how everything works together, realizing that Jeremiah was a contemporary of Daniel. Remember, Daniel was reading Jeremiah when he recognized the 70 years, and God revealed to him the 70 weeks, more information that came out of that. But he understood that there would be a captivity for 70 years. And while we are in lockdown, and we got news here in the state of Maine that we're going to stay social distancing for a while longer, it's not business as usual yet. Some things have opened up, barber shops, beauty salons, Joann Fabrics and Hobby Lobby, places like that are open. Others haven't. We here at the church are still looking at what we'll be able to do going forward. Talk to Carol Conley a little bit more and pray for the Conley family. His wife Terry's mother passed away this past week, so they're in Alabama. They've been down there with her so they could be with her at the end. And so pray for them. But we're still waiting to see when we'll be able to have services again. And Jeremiah was in a situation, Isaiah was about 120 years before, when Isaiah started teaching that there was going to be a captivity because of people's idolatry, because people weren't taking care of the poor, the widows, the orphans like they were supposed to be. People were greedy, people were taking advantage of each other, predatory lending, things like that were going on at that time. So, humanity is pretty much the same from generation to generation. Isaiah started about 120 years before God gave him the word that there was going to be a captivity. They would go into captivity in Babylon, and then after that it would be the Medes and the Persians. Interesting when you study it. Jeremiah was more contemporary. While Jeremiah was alive, this was happening. The captivity was happening. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they were taken into captivity at that time. Jeremiah 29, I'm going to read the whole passage, a longer scripture passage that we're going to go through today, but I think it's important that we get the whole context. Jeremiah 29 says, "Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent from Jerusalem unto the residue of the elders which were carried away captives, and to the priests, and to the prophets, and to all the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon." That would include Daniel. That's why Daniel was reading Jeremiah, because it was written to him. And then it says in verse 2, "After that Jeconiah the king, and the queen, and the eunuchs, the princes of Judah and Jerusalem, and the carpenters and the smiths were departed from Jerusalem." And so first the king, the queen, the political leadership was taken captive. After that, the people that actually made things work. One of the things that we've learned during this time of the lockdown, we don't need athletes, we don't need movie stars, we don't need musical stars. We need people to keep things going. We need people to pick up the trash. We need people to stock the stores at the grocery store, shelves at the grocery store. We need people to process the meat, the food. We need people to do the day-to-day work. And the people that did the day-to-day work, and the carpenters, those that were building homes and building cabinets and everything else, the smiths, so silver, gold, but also tin work and iron, whatever they had for iron at that time. The people that made Jerusalem work, the people that made sure that things ran smoothly. During Isaiah's time, the people were living a good life, living to a good standard of life, and they took it for granted what they had. And that's one of the reasons why they went into captivity, so they could see, don't ever take for granted what God has given us and what he's done for us. Try never to take that for granted. But they take away all the people that did all the work, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But after everybody's gone, verse 3, by the hand of Elisha, the son of Shaphan, and Gemariah, the son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah, king of Judah, sent into Babylon to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, saying, and so he's just saying, these are the two guys that I wrote the letter, we duplicated it, they took the letter for me on my behalf to the people that were already in captivity. Still a lot of people living in Jerusalem, still a lot of people that are trying to get by without that leadership, but the letter's written, and it says, verse 4, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. First thing to remember, we are in isolation, we're in quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it, social distancing. We're here, God caused it to be. There's a reason and a purpose for it. This didn't take God by surprise. It serves the greater good. It serves his purposes. Don't ever forget that. But he says, God, you that are in captivity, I caused you to be into captivity. And this is what he says to them. Build ye houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. Take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons, and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may be increased there and not diminished. And so he says, listen, this is at least two generations long. You're going to be in captivity for at least 2 generations. We know that's the 70 years he's talking about. Why does he tell them that? Why does he tell them, go ahead, build a house, plant a garden, eat the fruit of the garden, have a family, understand while you're in captivity, I expect there to be more of you after the captivity than before. I expect you to live your lives and do what I've commanded you to do, be fruitful and multiply. And verse 7 says, seek the peace of the city, and another word for peace is welfare. Some other translations translate that word as welfare. But seek ye the peace of the city, whither I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it. For the peace thereof, in the peace thereof, you shall have peace. I have seen a lot of people just attacking government, a lot of Christians, and certainly I can understand, as an American, I have rights, the right to freely assemble, the separation of church and state. There are rights that are given to me by a document, the Declaration of Independence, and I am very concerned about what we might come out of this as, but it serves no purpose for us to go on and criticize the governor, the government, whatever, and just seem like we are just upset and angry that we've lost our rights. We have a lot of rights as Americans, a lot of rights that we've protected, people have died for. I'm glad to live here. I'm glad I have the rights I have. But it's interesting, as an American, I have the right of free speech. But as a Christian, God says there's a time to bite your tongue. There's a time to not say what you want to say. There's a time to stop and listen. To understand that our rights as believers are different than our rights as Americans. And as long as our rights, our believers, are not being trampled on by our rights as Americans, by the government as Americans, the rest of it is, we have to be careful of our testimony, what people think. And if we're out there, people are scared, people are concerned. Can you imagine, as Jeremiah is writing this to people that have just been taken into captivity, they've been uprooted from their homes, from their families' homes, they've lived there for generations. Now they're taken to Babylon to resettle and start all over again from the beginning. And here Jeremiah, God is telling them through Jeremiah, go ahead and build houses, plant gardens, build a life, build a family, raise a family, and ask me, God, that I would protect Babylon and prosper Babylon, because as Babylon prospers, so will you. Now, Nebuchadnezzar's a wicked king at this point. He hasn't lost his mind. He hasn't come to recognize the God of Israel. He's just getting to know Daniel at this point. It's all very new. And certainly the people are upset. Certainly the people are scared. They're concerned. And so God, through Jeremiah, is telling him this. And he's telling him this for a reason and for a purpose. Because verse 8, for thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, let not your prophets and your diviners that be in the midst of you deceive you, neither hearken you to your dreams, which you caused to be dreamed. For they prophesy falsely unto you in my name. I have not sent them, saith the Lord. For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place, back home again. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give an expected end. What was happening is there were prophets, there were diviners, there were people, you could say talking heads, political pundits, whatever. In that day, some of the Jews that had gone into exile in Babylon were saying, look, don't unpack, don't get too comfortable, we're going right home again. We still have the God of Israel, the God of Jerusalem. He's still on our side. We're going home. Just don't take any time trying to learn the language. Don't take any time trying to fit in, because we're going right home again. And God says, I didn't give them that message. My message is you're going to be there 70 years. My message is make the best of it. My message is make a life for yourself there in Babylon. I won't forget you. I know what I desire towards you, but why 70 years? Some of you already know this. Why 70 years? God commanded the year of Jubilee, that every so many years the land would lie fallow. How many years? That's not important in our message right now. But you farm the land for a couple of years and then you let it lie rest. Now farmers today, we understand by science, by technology, of course today we put a lot of chemicals in the ground. What happens when you farm is those chemicals are taken up by the plants as they are growing, and it depletes the earth. And so you farm on a plot of land one year, the next year you plant alfalfa, there's other things that they plant, and they let that grow for a year. And they plant crops that can live in that depleted soil, so that at the end of the season, those crops, that alfalfa and those other plants, they are tilled under back into the land, replenishing the nutrients that the land needs. And what you can do is a 3-year cycle. So 1 year you plant, the next year you plant the alfalfa, the third year you just let everything break down and replenish the soil. They hadn't been following God's plan. They hadn't let the soil replenish itself. They were working the land hard. God knew and understood that if you keep working the land hard, sooner or later you're going to lose your crops. They didn't do it. And if you total up how many years they didn't do it, it works out to 70 years worth of time. They did not observe the land of the year of Jubilee and do what God told them to do. So God said, I'll tell you what, you didn't do what I told you to do, so I'm going to make sure that you have to do it. I'm going to make sure you learn the hard way, because sometimes that's the only way people learn. I'm going to make sure you learn. Better to have been in the land and let the land lie fallow than to continue to harvest it. Now, why did the people continue to harvest the land? Were they stupid? Did they just not know any better? No. The reason they were farming for all they could get was greed. They wanted the money, they wanted the crops to sell. Rather than having enough to live on and having some profit, they wanted all to be profitable. They wanted it all the time to pay back. Corporate America, a lot of our companies, publicly traded companies, the products that they provide, the services that they sell, they're all about making money for someone else. And every year you got to make more than you made the year before. You got to find a way this year in 2020 to make more than we made in 2019, which is a year we made more than 2018. It goes backwards. There's always got to be more. When is it enough? That's what God's trying to teach the people. Look, you've got enough. I gave you plenty. You don't need more. But he's telling them, you're going to be in the land for 70 years. This is for your own good. You disobeyed. You didn't do what I told you to do. This is for your own good. Don't think I've forgotten about you. I will remember you. But then he goes on in the rest of the chapter 29, verse 12, then shall you call upon me, and you shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And you shall seek me and find me, when you shall search for me with all your heart. And I will be found of you, saith the Lord. And I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord. And I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. I'm going to bring you home again. My timing is such, you will be home again. Not you perhaps, but your descendants, your grandkids. Your kids might see it, but your grandkids are going to come back and live in the land. And he used Cyrus, and he used the Persian purse, basically to give a credit card to Nehemiah to come out and rebuild. That's how God works. But he says in verse 15, because you've said, the Lord has raised up prophets in Babylon, know that thus saith the Lord of the king that sitteth upon the throne of David. He's talking about a physical person, the throne of David in Jerusalem. There's someone there. I am his Lord. You're in Babylon, and you're listening to people in Babylon that are telling you lies, that we're going right home again. But you believe them. Why do you believe them? Because you choose to. He also talks about them in verse 8. It says, don't hearken to your dreams which you caused to be dreamt. Boy, I want to go home again, and if I want it enough, it'll happen. We got to go home. We can't stay here. God's got to take care. I just know He's gonna. I remember the first lottery in the state of Florida. One of the first lottery winners early on. Actually, it was after about a year. I take that back. After about a year, the Florida lottery. There was a woman that won the lottery, and they were putting them on the nightly news on Saturday nights or whatever it was. They were putting them on the local news. Talking about winning the lottery. And this woman got on and she said, I always knew I was going to win. I just knew I was going to win. There were times I didn't buy food for my children so I could buy my ticket because I knew I was going to win. Those are the dreams that are caused to be dreamed. In her case, yes, she won it. Is it because she's deserving? Is it because... No. In fact, it was probably the worst thing that happened to her. Generally speaking, people who win the lottery 5 or 10 years later are bankrupt. That's the way it works out. If you don't know how to handle the money, it's going to go through your hands really quick. But God says, listen, you've listened to these people. You've listened to what they've said. And it says, know that the Lord of the king that sits upon the throne of David, and all the people that dwell in this city, and of your brethren that are not gone forth with you into captivity, those that are still in Jerusalem. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will send upon them the sword, the famine, and the pestilence, and will make them like vile figs that cannot be eaten. They are so evil. What was left behind after they took the movers and the shakers, they took away the leadership, they took away the talented people, what was left behind was not good leadership. What was left behind were people that were serving their own interests. And God says, listen, if I did take you right back into the land, I would be taking you right back into the sword and into sickness and into death. You don't want to come home. You're going to be protected in Babylon. You're going to enjoy a higher lifestyle. You're going to have better education in Babylon. The head of learning at its time, the head of science at its time was Babylon. I put you in a good situation. Don't disrespect what I have done for you in putting you there. There's a reason for it. Even in your judgment, I am being good to you. He goes on to talk about how he's going to wipe out those prophets. And verse 23, talking about those prophets that are in Babylon, says, because they've committed villainy in Israel and have committed adultery with their neighbors' wives and have spoken lying words in my name. They're saying God told us to say this, which I have not commanded them, even I know and am a witness, saith the Lord. Thus shalt thou speak to Shemaiah the Nehelamite, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of... I'm sorry, I don't speak ancient Israel. Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, saying, because thou hast sent letters in thy name unto all the people that are at Jerusalem, to Zephaniah the son of Messiah the priest, and to all the priests, saying, the Lord has made thee priest in the stead of Jehoiada the priest, that you should be officers in the house of the Lord, for every man that is mad and maketh himself a prophet, that thou should put him in prison and in the stocks. Those that say, look, God has put me in this position when God has not, he says they should be locked up, they should be put away. For therefore he sent us unto Babylon, saying, this captivity is long, build ye houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. And so this is what he's told them to do. And he says, listen, verse 31, send all them of the captivity, saying, thus saith the Lord concerning Shemaiah the Nehelamite, because that Shemaiah has prophesied unto you, and I sent him not, and he caused you to trust a lie. Therefore thus saith the Lord, behold, I will punish Shemaiah the Nehelamite. And it's interesting that he uses the full title because he wants there to be no question who he's talking about. Specific, this one specific person. He says that I will punish him and his seed. He shall not have a man to dwell among his people, neither shall he behold the good that I will do for my people, saith the Lord, because he's taught rebellion against the Lord. He says, listen, because this guy is setting himself up to be a priest, to be a prophet, he's setting himself up and saying, listen, follow me, obey me, God told me this. Because he's telling you a lie, I'm going to see to it he has no grandkids, no kids and no grandkids. And God cut him off so that there was no lineage after him. And so there's 5 points I've got here. I'll go through them. And understand, when I put the points up on the screen, that's the longest part of my production, putting this together, to put the points together, put them up on the screen. It takes me 20-25 minutes to speak, 10-15 minutes to put it on the computer. The computer chews on it for an hour or two. I do my editing, chews on it for another hour or two, and it takes about 5 hours to upload it to YouTube. So this little video you're watching, there's a lot of time into it. Of course, I'm not busy that whole time, but I want you to see this. First thing I want you to see is political leadership is not the answer. And in fact, Isaiah, talking about what was coming and what he could already see in his time, one of the punishments of God, Isaiah chapter 3, verse 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. And I will give, in verse 4, back in verse 4, I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. You ever look in Washington, D.C. and say they're acting like children, bunch of kids? They're acting like they are immature. They're acting like they don't know how to get along. They're acting like they don't know, all they want is their own way. That's a punishment to Israel that Isaiah called out. And at the very beginning of chapter 29 in Jeremiah is saying they're all gone. The leadership's gone. They're already in captivity. Political leadership is not the answer. Number 2, the situation we find ourselves in, occupy and be at peace as much as possible. He says, pray for Babylon, pray for the nation, pray for the city, because its prosperity is your prosperity. Its welfare is your welfare. That's Old Testament. New Testament, Romans chapter 12, verse 18, if it be possible, as much as lies in you, live peaceably with all men. And we're also told to pray for the king and to try and live at peace with everybody around us. We're to occupy. Jesus said, occupy till I come. We're not here to start a war. We're not here to start a political revolution. We're not here to be rabble-rousers and rebels. We're here to share the gospel, the good news. We're here to share faith and hope and trust and love. We're here to let people know that there is a God that cares about them. And so we're to be at peace as much as possible, as much as within us is. We're to occupy and be at peace as much as possible. Again, it does us no good to complain about our leadership in a public forum, that we as Christians start looking like we're taking political sides. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to pray for those in authority. And talking about the situation they found themselves in, we've also shared, and you've heard it a lot, if my people which are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. Well, a lot of God's people are praying, but are we humbling ourselves? Are we asking God, is the reason we're going through this because there's some failing in us, in our church attendance, in our worship, in our walk before Him? Are we covetous of things more than His presence? Is our desire anything but Him? We're supposed to be spending some time. That is a possibility. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying it is a possibility. And we're supposed to be spending time in prayer before Him, asking Him, Lord, what would you have us to do? Our political leadership is not the answer. Occupy and be at peace as much as possible. And while we're occupying and trying to be at peace, be careful who we listen to. Here he is calling out the prophets and saying, one in particular who has been particularly obnoxious, I'm going to make sure that his whole lineage is gone. There will be no more after him. He's the end of the line. I have no patience for him. Matthew 24, the Lord said, verse 23, if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Listen, if we as Christians, as believers, could be deceived, and that's one of the reasons I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture, because if we were here, we might believe the lie. He says it right here. It was enough that what's going to come is going to be enough to confuse us and to deceive us. Be careful who you listen to, especially in these times. Be careful what people say, and be careful what you're liking on Facebook and on social media, what you're saying. We should always be liking Jesus Christ first and foremost. Political leadership's not the answer. Occupy, be at peace as much as possible. Be careful who we listen to. And then remember, God has not forgotten us and He's still on the throne. He hadn't gone anywhere. He's still taking care of us. He's still mindful of us. Hebrews 13:5 is the New Testament. Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as you have. For He has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Where did He say that? Back in Deuteronomy. Understand, He hadn't gone anywhere. He's in the middle of this. Take comfort in the fact that while we are sheltering in place, we're not alone. He's with us. He's in the midst of us. Hopefully our families and our relationships and our homes are such that He can feel comfortable here and have liberty among us. Hopefully that's what we're doing right now. Finally, God will take care of those who are disobedient in His own way, in His own time. And so what I would say is the lesson from Jeremiah. I thank God that we might be in self-isolation, call it quarantine or whatever, through the whole summer, but it ain't 70 years, people. It's not 70 years. We're going to come out of this sooner or later. What about businesses? Well, we're supposed to trust in the Lord. Certainly there were times in Israel when God held back the rain, when God sent the locust, when there was disease in the land. Why did He do it? The people might turn to Him. We trust in Him. We've had to live by faith for years now. And I'm not saying I'm the example, and I'm not saying that we won't go without. I don't know what's going to happen. I do know God's there before I get there. He's already seen what's going to happen. My needs are already going to be met. The day and time will come, and I will know that He's been there before me. He's taken care of us. So politics are not the answer, never have been. People get the government that we deserve. We get to vote on our own government, so we cannot in any way, shape, or form deflect from the fact that these are the folks we put in office. Occupy, be at peace as much as possible. Listen, enjoy your family, enjoy your home, enjoy the good things that God has given to you. Enjoy the sunrises and sunsets, enjoy the walks, enjoy what God has given to you. Be at peace as much as possible. He is coming back. And when He comes, in Israel, they were looking forward from Babylon to coming back to Jerusalem. You and I are looking forward to going home to heaven. That day will come. Understand, we need to be careful who we listen to, what we're putting in our heads. Sometimes doctrine, sometimes false teaching will make us aggressive and angry and dissatisfied, wanting more than what we have. Be careful who you listen to. And if you start living in negative emotions, you start living with depression, you might want to take a look who you're listening to and who you're talking to. That has a big effect. Remember that God has not forgotten us, and He's still in charge, still on the throne. And finally, understand when the day and time comes, we don't have to worry about revenge. But we should live in a just society. We should have laws that punish offenders, those that would steal or kill or whatever. But understand, in the end, God will take care of His own. And God will take care of those who are disobedient as well. That day and time will come. Meantime, be safe. Just work hard to enjoy what God has given you. Be thankful for what you have. I know there's folks out of work. I'm praying for you that God continues to meet your needs. I know there's folks that are hurting. I know at least 2 people this past week that lost loved ones. One was a child. Another one was a husband of 30-some years. People are going through tough times. I understand that. Going to have to start wearing masks when we go outside, if you can imagine such a thing. All the things that we have coming. Listen, what we're going through is nothing compared to what this world's going to go through when the tribulation hits. When Jesus Christ judges this earth, it's nothing compared to what's coming. I'm here. Give me a call. Be happy to talk to you. Been talking to our folks a lot this week. Glad to hear from them. By and large, seems most folks are doing well. I am praying for you. I do care about you. Don't forget, I love you. And thank you for watching today. Lord bless you. Have a great week.